Okay.
You guys are headed to an arbitration hearing. Some people have settled. I guess the counter argument would be, why don't you just settle? Why are you arguing with their best player over $650,000? So what are you guys thinking?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I think we would always prefer to settle cases, and work to settle that case as Bryan did and his representatives at CAA. Just didn't quite get there. I don't know if this year's unusual circumstances had anything to do with it. It feels like there are just more hearings out there, so maybe the shorter negotiation period that we all had impacted it in some way. It's hard to say, but we'd always prefer to settle, and I think just generally speaking, we'd generally prefer to avoid hearings with players, but we're also not going to allow that, and I know Bryan won't allow that to be a distraction of any kind, and we're obviously thankful that he's a Pirate and respect him really highly as a player and as a person, and we'll figure out the contract however we need to figure it out, and we'll enjoy watching it out there in a Pirates uniform.
It can be a little more difficult, I guess, than just put it in black and white like this, but why not continue to try to negotiate or find a way to break the file and trial to settle contract? A couple teams have done that the past week or so.
Feels like there's an assumption baked inside your question. So, I mean, I don't think I would want to comment publicly on any contract conversation with a player of any kind, and
okay.
So I don't want to do that in this case either. Like I said, I would just go back to what I said before. Like our first choice would always be to avoid a hearing. So.
Ben, you guys sent Oneil down. Shelty called it a development opportunity. I was just wondering maybe if you could describe like what is that opportunity? What would you guys like to see develop?
Sure.
What's the checklist there?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a handful of things, and first off, we're really excited about him as a player and the growth he's showing even year to year. I feel like he's a better player now than he was last year. So we're really excited about it. I think there's a few things. One is simply just that he has not played above AA much at all, and so there are things that there's just less we know about him as a player above the AA level, and there's some value we believe in getting a little bit more competition at AAA. The defensive, just continued defensive progression partly is at shortstop certainly, and continue and putting himself in the best position to be the best shortstop defender. But as with every young player, we also want to create some versatility there, which we started doing spring training, but in a short spring training, you just don't have a lot of time to do it. We were going to start that last year. He got hurt. So there's some defensive development there that we believe is important, and we believe can happen at least to start the season at AAA, and just want to just put him in the best possible position defensively to come up and be a regular player somewhere on the field, and felt like a little bit more time on that was going to be helpful for him. Offensively, everyone knows he hits the ball really hard, and he's got a chance to be a dynamic offensive player, and I guess this isn't specific to him, but generally speaking, we'd feel best if a young player is coming to the big leagues, coming into a major league lineup, having been on a roll, and having gotten consistent everyday playing time, being like really locked into their routine, and again in a short spring training there just wasn't much time to do that. So there will be specific development goals set out for Oneil that we'd rather not share in detail publicly, but kind of generally at a higher level, those are the things.
When you see a guy like Oneil, I mean, he's got so much talent, it's easy to get excited.
Yeah.
And then you balance that with, you don't want to bring him up too fast and maybe crush him a little bit. But how do you balance like that with like guys like the Tigers, you know, they took chances on a couple of those younger players and they've had success so far. Do you feel a need to compete with that or to balance out with that?
I think we have to think about every individual player as its own individual case, and trust the Tigers have more information on the players that they're making those decisions on than we would, and so we got to make decisions about Oneil based on the information we have, and every player is different, and we're trying to every decision we make is about is made so in our opinion so that we puts us in the best possible position to win as much as possible as soon as possible, and that includes with Oneil. You know, we want him to impact the Pirates at the highest level possible, help us win as many games as possible, and you know, so we and in order to do that, you know, if he is the fullest developed version of himself, and we put him in a situation where when he comes into the big leagues and hopefully stays there, it's as the most fully developed version that we can, then we believe that help the Pirates win the most amount of games over time. Again, there's no that's not to say that improvement doesn't continue to happen at the major league level. Of course it does. So it's balancing all of that. But I think simpler put, again, would go back to every individual player is an individual player, and Oneil's circumstance is different than any other individual player.
How tough was the conversation with him to have?
It was hard. I think Shelton and I were anxious going into it because of the effort that Oneil has put in, and because the maturity we've seen over the last year and the growth, and how seriously he's taken that, and knew that it was not going to be news that he was going to enjoy hearing. So we were prepared for that, but he handled the conversation exceptionally well. He immediately left the conversation, and Hector Morales and John Baker were outside, you know, in the hallway at LECOM, happened to be there at the time, and he immediately found them, and all said, I'll be at Pirate City in the morning, and so I thought he handled it exceptionally well, and he'll get a chance to start his season here very soon in Indy.
I know these talks just started, and I don't know how much you'd be willing or able to comment on it at all, but with Key, the contract, you know, long-term deal, why is it coming about again this year? And this kind of goes against the timeline of the contract's already in place for him, rather than, you know, we're talking contracts, we got to talk long-term future also with someone like this.
Yeah, well, you won't be surprised to hear that I'm not going to comment on any individual player's contract again. I just don't feel like that's doing a player or us any good to do that. I've said before, you know, over time, we hope to have that door open and find common ground with guys over time. But you know, past that, I don't have anything else to say on it.
Ben, I remember talking to you in the past about you know, how important development is, and you guys need to bring these guys up, and there's nothing stopping you from getting guys in here and finding talent all kinds of different ways. Like, on the opposite end of that, do you view it as important as, like, look, I need to sign a Key Bryan, I need to sign a Bryan, you know, I'm not talking individual names, but to, like, sort of say, we're doing this. And I mean, like, you know, to other guys in the clubhouse, does it matter to see somebody sign somebody long term? Does it matter to you as a general manager to put that stake in the ground?
I don't know if I wouldn't want to speculate as to, you know, what matters to other players, and I think that we want to make decisions. We want to have good relationships with players. Certainly, we want to have an environment where players want to be in. We want to have an environment where players believe there's a chance to win, and that we're all doing everything we possibly can, you know, to get to that as soon as possible. Any specific decision, whether it's about a contract or a trade or a signing or whatever, anything, you know, I don't think we should ever make for any other reason other than, is this best for the Pirates, or if it's a contract, in the case of a contract, is this best for the Pirates and this player? Because if you start to think about, you know, too many other factors, it just, you know, I think it makes it makes decision making even harder than it has to be. And so we'll try to simplify it as we can. And of course we want players in that clubhouse to believe in where they are, believe that we're doing everything possible to build a winning team and to get to that as soon as we possibly can. And of course there's all different factors that are gonna come into that for those guys, I'm sure.
I know you generally don't, not talking about contracts, not talk about trades or whatever. I'm guessing this is one you might talk about. You saw the Reynolds stuff that came out, right? That you guys were had talked to the Padres or something. That there had been discussions. And what I wanted to frame it as is like, how do you approach that? I would imagine look, I have to listen. They're gonna call. They're gonna call. But
how do I approach it with Bryan?
With anybody really. But I mean, if you're willing to talk about Bryan, that's my ask. But and how far did that get?
Bryan's a really good player, and he's young, and we're not winning yet. So
you do
that you combine all those things, and of course, that means teams are gonna call, and so teams call, and those calls are incoming calls. they're not outgoing calls. And I just tell Bryan the same thing, that hey, we have to be prepared that every once in a while, because those teams are going to call, someone's going to get some information somehow from that, and it's going to be out there in the world for people to read about. And the great thing about Bryan is that he, I think, really could care less. I mean, he is a baseball player. He is so focused on what he's doing on the field. I think the hardest, this isn't specific to Bryan, I think the hardest thing for players in that situation is it's not so much them, it's family, it's the other people that are impacted by that, and everyone's got lives to live. And so what we try to do is we just, again, try to stay in communication with players, and share as much as we possibly can, about what's going on or what's not going on. And there are times when if there's something specific that's reported, that we can follow up on with a player and just help clarify.
Yeah.
Then sure, we'll do that. And I have done that in the past with other players too, with the Pirates in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Alluding to something you said at the very first part of that, it's like, he's really good and we're not winning yet. Is there anything that can be done outside of cutting off a phone cord besides winning, to stop calls like that?
Oh, I mean, I think that I don't know, but I would speculate this stuff tends to die down once the season starts, because you get into the season and it's just not as much of a focus. So that's what I would expect would happen.
You mentioned these tough calls and these tough conversations you have, the Oneil thing, but what about Castillo? He seems like a genuinely good kid.
Yeah, great story. I mean, just the opportunity to deliver that news and see the look on his face, those are cool moments, and I'm really happy for him. He, when we acquired him, we knew that he was a free agent, a minor league free agent at the end of last year. When we acquired him, we knew that, and we knew that we were either going to try to re-sign him or add him to the roster. And the truth is, we tried to re-sign him first to a minor league deal before we added him. And I talked to him on the phone a couple times, and of course, he hasn't been here for long, so I don't have much of a relationship with him at that time. And for a young player, he was just so very respectfully, but so clear with me, no, it's, I'm going to get a roster spot and I'm going to make a team. And sure enough, he did. So good for him. He's had a great spring training.
Do you have many players talk to you like that?
Sure, yeah. But no, but he did it in a very respectful, mature way, and just came from confidence in himself, but wasn't in a sort of bragging way at all. He just was believing in himself and believed what he was going to do, and sure enough, he's gone out and done it. It's cool.
Backup catcher, anything solidified?
Yeah, you know, we're gonna make that decision by Thursday.
That's good.
And you know, some of it just comes down to like, you know, we gotta make sure on health on guys that are here, and the spring training. So sometimes there's movement outside the organization too. We're keeping an eye on that, and then we got to thinking about the whole season too, not just opening day, but who's going to be in Indy, and trying to make sure we have, you know, not just one option, but more than one option.
Yeah.
As we get into the season, so we'll have clarity very soon. We don't have it quite yet.
That was going to be a follow up. Like, is external an option? You know, I know with the shortened spring and getting the no pitchers and all that stuff, but if a guy comes out there on the market that can help you, I'm guessing you'd be still open to that option as well.
Yeah, I think we just got to keep looking at everything, and you know, feel good about, like, knock on wood, health, assuming health. You know, feel good about Michael Perez and Jamie Ritchie specifically. If those, you know, those are the two guys that have kind of been in the competition mostly this spring. Because Taylor Davis isn't eligible to be on the team right away. So, but we'll evaluate health, evaluate, you know, all the options, and make the decision by Thursday.
This one's a little bit out of left field, but it was something that was brought up at the beginning of the offseason. Whenever it comes to housing for minor league players, what is in place right now for the Pirates?
Yeah, so obviously we fully support the new standards that the league announced a while back, and then as soon as we had those, and this had started already. We've just partnered with all of our affiliates to figure out not just what are we going to cover. We know what we're going to cover, but what's the best way to do that? What's the best, because you got to find the right apartment complex to partner with at each place, and make sure that you're going to get the service that you want. And in some ways, because the team's paying for it, it actually makes us take that even more seriously, because, you know, look, we're paying for this. We want to make sure that the standard is really high and the service is there, and that, you know, we need more, we can get more, you know, players move from level to level, like we figure all that stuff out. So we've had a group of people working with each of our affiliates on that. Feel like we're in a good spot at each level. Some of that had already been in place in the past anyway. And then beyond that, we've taken steps at each level to be able to have you know, flexibility in specific cases. Like, for example, if someone has a family, that's different, right, than if someone doesn't, and, you know, that kind of thing. So we've got flexibility with each of our the like apartment complexes that we've identified, where we can accommodate people that have significant others, kids, etc., with them. And so, you know, the combination of the covering the cost of the housing, along with the salary increases that happened previously, we've actually, with specific groups of players, we've increased that rate again this year voluntarily. You know, just to try to do everything we can to make sure that minor league players are as supported as they possibly can. And then we continue to invest in food and other pieces of it too. So I also think we need to learn more. You know, some of this is new, and we're going to get into April, and by the end of April, we'll learn more from our players about, hey, this is really working, and if this isn't working, we'll, you know, address that. And but it's really important to us that all of our minor league players feel like they have appropriate, you know, good appropriate housing accommodations, feel taken care of. I mean, I really do believe as an industry, this is arcing in a positive direction. If you think about everything combined, the housing, the salary increases, the schedules and travel changes that have just made travel easier, less exhaustive in the minor leagues, and all of that combined, and then facility standards improving, you know, facilities improving also over time. I feel like it's all adding up to clearly going in the right direction. It doesn't mean it's perfect, and so if there are imperfections in it that we find out about, as we learn about things as we get into the season, then we'll find out about them and we'll address them the best we can.